long have you been in the neighborhood? How long have you been in Athens, Georgia?
My name is Mary P. Bagby. I've been in the same house on East Broad Street for over 40 years. Been on the same side of town for over 40 years. Been on the east side for maybe about 50 years. And I know quite a bit about the community that I live in and different things that go on in the neighborhood and in the country.
Very good. So, Mary, what do you remember what's the most memorable aspect of your life that happened in the 50s?
In the 50s, one of the traumatic experiences that I had was on a Greyhound bus between Georgia and North Carolina. Back then, the bus driver would wake you up and tell you where to get off. Every bus driver knew where their stops and starts were. All of the bus drivers were Caucasian, but they would, if someone went to sleep, you didn't have to worry about ending up in another city. So on one particular trip, there was a black gentleman and his lady friend, or wife, or whoever it was with him, didn't get off at their stop. The bus driver went back to try to wake them up, and he couldn't wake the man up. So the man was fighting him off as if he was very, very sleepy or drinking or something, I don't know, but he could not seem to wake up. The bus driver got off and called the police. The police came, and they began to try to wake the man up, and he was not really waking up. I was about 4 or 5 years old at the time. And I remember when they grabbed him and began to beat on him, I started screaming. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to start screaming. I'm like 4 or 5 years old. And none of the adults would do anything to stop this beating. And they drug him off the bus. I remember screaming for them to stop. And my sucking mom was putting my head down, not wanting me to see it and not wanting me to say. No one said anything. No white people, no black people said anything as they beat this man and drug him off the bus by his feet. And so his head was bouncing. That was my first traumatic experience with white on black crime. And as I got older, I learned many other things. Like, for instance, I learned that I didn't have a right to hit somebody back if they hit me if they were white, but I didn't know that. So a little white girl took something of mine, and I asked her to give it back, and she didn't give it back, and so I hit her. Well, so I got spanked because it was better for me to get spanked than me and my family get killed or something else to happen. So that was another experience that I had. And during the 60s, I remember coming in and seeing the March on Washington with Dr. King. I had gotten out of school, and I saw that. It was just monumental to see the people coming together like that. And I remember when President Kennedy was assassinated, we were in school, and one of the cut-ups was sent to the lunchroom, and he came back to the class and told us that President Kennedy had been assassinated. That was very historical and very huge, and because people loved President Kennedy, they loved his wife, and you could really feel and see discrimination, even though some of us were protected at a young age, because some of our parents maybe didn't talk about it and pressure us about these different events. But we did live through them. And I not lived through the riots at Watts. I was not out there, but I knew about the different things that was going on. And I saw many people suffer. And I still see us suffering. I never had a Caucasian teacher until I went to Athens Tech. I grew up with black teachers.
How old were you when the Board of Education of Topeka, when school integration, Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka was a Supreme Court decision in 1954. How old were you, and what did it mean for you to probably be
That was when I was 5 or 6 years old, when I saw the police drag this man off the bus, when we sat in the back and white people sat in the front, and we gave up our seat if they got on and they needed more seats. So I can't address that as far as my age was concerned, but I never went to integrated schools.
What were the schools like when you were in school?
Well, as I look back and I think about the banquet that was held last week, and someone made a statement, ma'am.
Tell us, what was the banquet last week?
A banquet I went to, and I'm not saying this to say that they had a part of what I'm saying, that I attended a banquet on Saturday, and I heard someone making some comments. But one of the things the person said, but I was not at liberty to address the statement about schooling. But what I would say, when this gentleman made a statement, I would have loved to have said, well, it's some things I know now that people don't know, because I learned how to diagram a sentence when I was going to school, and when I took classes at Athens Tech, and one of my teachers marked one of my answers wrong on her test, and I went to her and showed her where she was wrong. And I went to the deans and the PhDs and everybody else to show them how she was wrong, and I diagrammed the sentence to show them where the words belonged in the sentence, and they didn't know what it was. But that was education from all black teachers. So I feel that education has failed since integration, because there are people doing things to undermine and uneducate black children. And as one of the students said to me in this particular class, well, if you know all this stuff, why are you here? And so I knew all the stuff, but I didn't have credentials that said I was qualified to know the stuff. So I went to get the paper. But education, when I was going to school, the teacher's attitude was, I've got mine, and you're going to get yours. But when integration came along, it shifted to, I got mine. I don't care if you don't get yours. That's what I feel was the failure. The eagerness to keep us down, keep black people down, was prevailing over the desire to help us reach equal footing. And I notice even now, when there are grade point averages that you have to reach, every time blacks ascend to the level that they want us to, they change the grade point averages, and they move it just a little bit higher for us. Although we don't have the same advantages, we don't have the same access to the things we need, we still are expected to come up. So I think education, I think we are uneducating our people.
So One worry is that with integration, a lot of good black teachers got fired. Do you know any stories of that, or have you heard of that, or was that?
Yes, here in Athens, with all the black principals, they don't hire black teachers. And it's believed that they don't want to be pressured, so they don't hire black teachers. And that's the problem. You should not use fear to keep you from doing what's right. And I relate to it because about 15 years ago, maybe 20, I applied for a job as a tutor. The person that was in position to hire me was a black female who stated to me that I was qualified for the job. However, it would look better if she hired a white male student from the University of Georgia. I did not get the job. So my concern about crime, I'm more concerned about black on black crime with the educated people, sophisticated people, the people that have arrived, that wear nice suits and nice cars. They have arrived and they're black. I'm more concerned about them than the children that are shooting each other in ignorance because they don't know it, because they don't have anybody to pull them up. When you are in a position to help me come up and you tell me the situation is going to look better if you keep me from getting a job that will keep me off welfare, but you want to call black women welfare queens. There are no black welfare queens. And then you want to not help me. If I need you to help me pay a bill or I need you to give me some food, you don't want to help me because I look like I have arrived. But maybe the suit only cost me $2. Or maybe I did my nails myself for $1.50. Maybe somebody donated my clothes to my children. But because they're name brand clothing, you don't think I deserve help because I heard somebody say that black. So I'm very concerned about black on black crime. But it's not the kind that somebody's shooting somebody because they need something to eat, because somebody that could have given them a job didn't give them a job. I'm concerned about SB 440, SB 441. Those are bills that was instigated to try children and delinquents as adults to keep us in prison. I'm concerned with putting us in prison without parole. I'm concerned with putting us in prison, and then I'm concerned about trying me outside the courtroom. You know, when you go to court here in Athens, Clark County, you know, they try you outside the courtroom in the hallway. See, you don't stand before the judge because the public defender and the DA give you a deal outside the courtroom, intimidate you, threaten you, humiliate you, make you fearful, coerce you. If you don't take this plea, then you're going to get 20 or 30 years. But you're supposed to go before the judge, and the judge is supposed to give you all these options. But you get tried outside the courtroom in the hallway. I'm concerned about discrimination. I'm concerned about the people that's supposed to uphold the law are breaking the laws. I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about manipulating the rules and the regulations. I'm concerned about when I go and be on trial and my case is dissolved, dismissed, disposition, or whatever the word is, and I go try to get a job 10 or 15 years later, and the court clerks have not done their jobs because they're supposed to report to the Georgia Crime Center how the case was disposed. But they're still on record that you got into a fight with your husband or your brother, your sister, and you were arrested. But there's no disposition on that case. So when you go apply for a job and they do a background check on you, the Georgia Crime Center sends this person a report and says, well, this person was arrested for this, and this. There's no disposition, and you don't get the job. But it was disposed of. I was tried. I was found not guilty by a jury, but there's no record at the Georgia Crime Center. So there are people walking around who have applied for a job, deserve a job, qualified for the job, but they don't get the job because maybe the person that did the background check doesn't bother to tell them that they have a record, but really they don't because it was disposed of. So people are not doing their jobs, but they're getting paid our money. But you want to complain because some brother standing on the corner, he doesn't have a job, and so he's standing on the corner. But he tried to get a job, but he wasn't told why he didn't get the job. They just told him, well, someone else was more qualified. They didn't want to go into details. And so these things are happening. So can we get something done? And see, little old Mary, I called to the public information office here in Athens, Clarke County. And I want a certain politicians or someone in office, someone that's supposed to be serving the public, I want to know their phone number. So the public service people, maybe you ought to lock that door. The public service people want to know, well, who are you? Well, I'm married. Yeah, but who are you with? Who am I with? I'm married. But what organization do you? I'm a tax-paying, law-abiding citizen of the United States of America in Athens. I shouldn't have to belong to any organization. I shouldn't have to be Esquire Mary, Reverend Mary, which is no such thing as Reverend. That's another lesson. Pastor Mary, Attorney Mary, Congressman. I should just be Mary, and I should be able to talk to someone in office that can help me with a problem that I might be having. Even I have called 2 mayors, and they wanted to know who was I with. I mean, what organization? Well, I have a concern, and I think you have the answer to my question. So why can't I just be a citizen in the city?
Can you tell me a little bit about the ways that you are an active citizen in Athens? I've seen you at events in town. I heard you attend meetings, banquets. Can you tell us a little bit about the ways that you are an active citizen in Athens?
I go to meetings. I hear the people that sponsor the meetings. They don't let the neighborhood know that they're having the meetings. So I word of mouth. Case in point, I heard about some meetings that's happening at a particular church every month, maybe the 3rd or 4th Monday in every month. But I heard it from another lady. I was at another function, and as I passed by someone, she said, we're having a meeting. It's a meeting over at East Friendship, and tomorrow night. Now, this is on a Sunday, and I hear about a meeting. And so I started going to these meetings, and after a while, I decided to ask a question. The question was, because everybody there had a title except me. Everybody was school counselor, school board of education representative, city counselor, commissioner, preachers, teachers, principals. And so my question was, I'd like to see the hands of all the parents that have children in school, not grandparents and great-grandparents such as myself and us. I'd like to see the hands of the parents here who have children in school from kindergarten to maybe 5th grade, 12th grade. There was not one parent. But what I don't like is when I go to these meetings, and that's why I go, because they get up and the people that are sponsoring the meeting say, well, we don't participate and we don't show up at any meetings. Well, we can't show up if you didn't tell us you were having the meeting. Because in that meeting, it should have been someone there, should have been a parent there, somebody from the east side, somebody from the west side, should have been a parent. But everybody there were in the clique, in the schism, in the loop, in the no, but none of the parents. And that concerns me. To most of these meetings I go to, the parents, and I'll tell you why some of the parents can't be there. Because some of the parents are such as my daughter, who worked in Brazelton, Winder, all these different, Jefferson. And so they have to be at work at 5 o'clock in the morning. So I had to go at 4 o'clock in the morning to my daughter's house, get the girls on the school bus, then walk back to my house. Then my daughter get off at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the evening. So I'm the one that go to the principal's breakfast the first Friday in every month. There are children that gets awards. Their parents can't always be there because their parents are working. They're not welfare queens. And then the children that's there and don't have a representative, someone like me, if my granddaughter's not getting an award, I would say I'd find out the children that was getting awards, whose parents were not there, and I found out their name, and I said, when they call your name, I'm going to stand up and clap for you. Support. See, you don't have to have a title to support. So that's what I do. I'm a support. I go to the meetings. So when somebody get up and say, well, you know, we don't show up at these meetings, and then I have to say, I have to tell them how I found out about it. You know, and I'm looking around, and I'm the only one there that just ordinary, everyday person. And so I want us to stop this, what is it, stigmatism, where they stereotype us and say things that's not true. We do show up. I show up. I've been showing up for over 40 years in Athens. But because I don't say I have a title, because I don't affiliate with this person, that person, the other person, we all should be concerned, but we need to stop lying. And another thing about the jobs, if I could. Every time an entity that wants to have supply work here in Athens, the mayor and council say, we don't have the skills. The people are not educated. Well, I bought a house with a 9th grade education because I had the skills. You see, skills are not all in a book. Skills is how many pegs can you put in this hole in 5 minutes? How can you run this machine? Can you measure this? Skills, dexterity. You don't have to have book sense to do a job, but they're using education to humiliate us and keep the jobs away from us. It's not necessarily a book. These companies that come here don't need you to know calculus. They need you to know how to run this machine, put it in order, measure it to see if the beams are running even, these types of things. It has nothing to do with, but they'll use that, and I'm sick of people using words to intimidate, incriminate, and insult the intelligence of black people. And I'm wanting some black people, some Negroes, some colored folk, which is words that's on our birth certificates. I mean, if you're about 70 like I am, there's no African American on your birth certificate. Okay? It says colored or Negro. That's what it says. And they don't even accept that. I went to apply for a job as a CNA, and I put down what was on my birth certificate. I put Negro. So the lady scratched it off. She said, you can't say that. You can't say that. And so I said, okay. Then I wrote black. She said, oh, no, you can't say that. That's not acceptable. But that's what I am, and that's what's on my birth certificate. But it's all right for you. But if I lie about something else on this application, you can fire me. But you can lie about what's on my birth certificate, and it's perfectly all right. It's just so many things that's wrong. So many things that's wrong.
So how do you separate, you've seen a lot of black leaders come in and out of Athens, some who were about the people and some who weren't. What were the differences that you noticed about the black leaders who were actually cared about the community versus the black leaders who were looking for an individual check?
The difference
What's the difference?
is that they'll say one thing in public and another behind closed doors. They'll vote for things that's going to make them look good. That's some of the things I see. I don't see all of the leadership that I would like to see here. I would like to see you put it on the line. You know, you can't straddle the fence. You can't tell me this right here and then get with somebody else and tell them something else. I would like to see us just be real and count the costs, count the loss, and celebrate the wins. But be truthful and have integrity. My mom used to say, if you got a lie to get it, you don't need it. And so, integrity. That's what I'd like to see. I like to see people be real, no matter who likes you or who dislikes you. And I feel good about myself in that when someone meets me, they don't scratch their head and say, I don't know. They either know they like Mary or they know they don't. And so I'm quite comfortable in being real. And that's what I think that people need. I think it's time to be real and choose a side, but make sure you choose the right side. And the right side is Jesus. The right side is doing what's right, no matter what other people say. Do right when someone is watching. Do right when you think no one is watching. Because when you think no one is watching, that's when everybody's watching. That's my philosophy.
All right, so you've been here for 70 years. Who did it right?
Who did it right?
Who did it right?
I tell you someone that I admire. I think Mrs. Coretta Scott King, I admire her because all the investigations of Hoover and everybody else that tried to destroy Dr. King and his legacy, I think she is a Proverbs woman. She was a Proverbs woman because scripture says a woman will do her husband good all the days of her life. And so Dr. King was assassinated many years ago. But Mrs. Coretta Scott King did him good all the days of her life. Her life. It didn't matter that he was gone. She didn't become a floozy. She didn't do anything to disrespect, to stain his name, to stain his honor, to stain her honor, to stain their reputation. She was a Proverbs woman. She did good to her husband all the days of her life. So integrity and honesty, sincerity, truth, I think. And there's another lady in Athens, Mrs. Agnes Tillman. I like Miss Agnes Tillman. I've known her for over 25 years. And while you hear bad things about black men, you don't hear about men like Minister Clarence Tillman. His wife and he had 8 children. She never worked as far as I knew. But she's a lady of integrity. She lives over near Hill Chapel Baptist Church. She'd come out and she talked to people. He would have food on his porch. He would give it to people. If you need anything, you could get it from them. Up until 2 weeks before Mr. Clarence Tillman died, he was trying to get somebody to take him South Georgia somewhere to get some fish to fry to sell. And he had amputations. So this is a black man who lived in this community, worked, took care of his family, even up to 2 weeks before his death. But you always hear about us on the streets doing this, that, and the other. Why don't we raise up? Why don't we show the heroes, show the people that's doing good, like my son, Anthony. My son is a musician, but he's married, has 3 children. He doesn't want anybody keeping his children. So he worked hard, long hours, and his wife does not work. And no one keeps his children but him, his wife, and me sometimes, only sometimes. But you don't hear about men that take care of their home. They willing to work. They willing to leave their wife at home with their children. They don't want people taking care of their children until their children can talk. You don't hear about people that's homeschooling their children. You don't hear. Let's hear about some good things, okay? And let's put down the bad things. Let's say we won't tolerate it. Let's say that the police need to go to jail too if they doing wrong. Let's use the law across the board. Let's don't say this person don't have to suffer because they're rich. This person have to suffer because they don't have any money. Let's use the law and just let's be fair and just. So that's what I like to see. I like to see honesty, integrity in Athens. And I like to see us get the things that we deserve. And the one more other thing is the reason why Jesus said you'll always have the poor with you is because when people get stimulus money from the government, they hide that money into different little grants and things. And you always have the poor with you because the ones that are the steward over what we need as poor people don't give it to us. They keep the money hidden. And then like when Miss London, Deborah London took this job. Now they dump all these millions of dollars into her lap that Athens Clark County has had all these years, but the money got to go back to the government when at the end of the year. What is it, $7,000 or 7 million or 70 million that Athens Clark County has for entrepreneurs and small businesses. But we don't know about it, but you got to jump through all these loops by the time you figure out how to fill out the application, how to come up with everything that you need that they want in writing. It's too late, and then you think they give the money back to the government? I don't think they give the money back to the government. I think they refunnel the money to something else that better serves them. So I'm concerned about. That's why when I hear these radio programs and people are getting on there saying things like, "Oh, black folks need to put some skin in the game." Do you really know what you're saying, Miss Dickerson and Miss Karina? Do y'all know what you're saying? Do y'all mean put some skin in the game like Nat Turner had to? You know, they took his skin and made a purse out of it and used his body to make soap. Is that the kind of skin you talking about putting in the game? See, and I don't like when people say something and then another black person come along and pick up this cliche euphemism or whatever you want to call it when you don't know where it came from. What does it mean, put some skin in the game? Because if I don't have any bootstraps, how can I pull myself up if I don't have any? Okay? So it's just so much. People doing this. Do you know that hanging and lynching are two different things? The person still is caught up. But a hanging, you went through court and they determined you should be hanged. A lynching is they just went and grabbed you and did it to you because of their bloodthirstiness. And so, but a legal hanging, they would put a hood over the person's head, and I don't know why they wouldn't want the person to know when they was going up, but the man down here would tell the hangman that would hang him, but he didn't know when they was going to hang him. So, we use all these things. Why do we have to assimilate and take on euphemisms, cliches, and all these things just because somebody else is doing it? I particularly am saying this now for the body of Christ. If we belong to Jesus and we study the scriptures, it says for us to not be conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of our mind. So I'm not supposed to take on what the world is saying, what the world is doing, what the world is believing, if it's not right. And I see that so much.
So what are the churches doing right and what are the churches doing wrong? You've seen a lot of churches. You've seen a lot of church people.
Mm-hmm. I can't say churches, I say church people.
Church.
Because if you belong to Jesus, then you are the church. You are part of his body, the church. So I have to say church people. Church people, some heads of the church organizations don't want to get involved because I think it has to do with tax cuts, where you have a 501c but you have to have certain guidelines. You have to share your congregants' social security numbers, your congregants' check stubs, your congregants. If they write you a check, you might have to share that, which I don't think should be shared with anyone. But people don't want to get involved. But the NAACP and civil rights were a major part of church congregations. They met in churches, and a good many of the members were church folk. So I see turning your head, not getting involved. I say you need to make a stand. You need to make a stand and stand for what's right.
Can you tell us a little bit about about you? Who do you come from?
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of work have you done? Who are the important members of your family?
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about
Well, on November the 4th, my mothers, I say mothers because I had two, my mothers were 100 years old on November the 4th. And we had a celebration. Even though they are not with us, we had a memorial celebration acknowledging that they existed. I went to a conference in Savannah, Georgia a few months ago, and I was walking with another person who's a doctor, Dr. Cujo, and we were walking with Dr. Dozier, who's the president of Savannah State University. And Dr. Dozier said, "How do y'all like our facilities?" And she was just going on and on and on. And Dr. Cujo was telling her how she liked it. And I said, "Oh, it's nice." And Dr. Dozier was talking about where all her parents and sisters and brothers and everyone went to school. And Dr. Cujo was saying that her mother came there to Savannah State, and they were naming everywhere their parents and sisters and brothers, uncles and fathers went. And I said, and my mother went to the farm because right after slavery, a few years on in, my grandmother told her father, she said, "Papa, I want my children to go to school." So my grandmother got a house in the city, took her children home with her, and bought them some clothes. And her father came and she said, "Papa, I want my children to go to school." And he said, "These children are not going to go to school. These children are going to go back to the farm." So my point to Dr. Dozier and Dr. Cujo was, I still survived. But people have a habit of looking at accolades and certificates and plaques on the walls and call it success. And this person that doesn't have any plaques, you call them unsuccessful, but you don't know my story. You don't know why I'm not where you think I ought to be. And I don't know how you got where you are, because I don't know the journey. I don't know the detours. My great-grandfather decided that my mom and her siblings were not going to go to school. So they went. My mother and father were uneducated. But my baby sister was one of the only black proofreaders over at the University of Georgia for all the professors that wrote books. Come from parents that were not educated. And she was a master sergeant in the Air Force Reserve, 18 years. She was working on her master's degree in education when she suddenly they said she had cancer. So I'm a certified nursing assistant. I'm a paralegal, but I don't do all that stuff. I'm an ordained minister, but I was ordained of God when I was 4 years old, not by man. So I have to make that clarification. I'm ordained of God, not by man, because man can tap those papers if they don't like you anymore, if they don't like what you say. So I'm covered by Jesus. I'm ordained of God and not man. So I teach scripture. I teach it uncompromised. I teach it the way it's supposed to be taught. I study. I know what it is in the Greek and the Hebrew because I know that it's written in English, the King's English, and the King's English has been transliterated, so you need to go back and see what were they talking about then when they say conversation, because conversation doesn't mean lip service. Conversation means lifestyle, as so many other words. So that's my life. I am a student of the Word. I love the Word. I love Jesus. I love my family. I have a beautiful daughter that's named Angela, and she's an angel to me. She's a yes, ma'am, mama child. That means whatever I need or whatever I ask, yes, ma'am, mama. So.
You said, can I ask one more question? You said that you, I think you said you had a 9th grade education.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us what happened that your education ended in 9th grade?
Oh, my education, because when I was going to school, things were different. And if you got pregnant, you couldn't go to school. And the culture was you were grown. So if you were grown, you couldn't play with your friends anymore. You might not have known what you was doing when you was doing what you was doing. You know. And when I tried to go back to school, they had the teacher, but they had older people coming, and you couldn't go past what they needed to know. And it was, to me, a waste of time to try to sit through things I already knew. Just like I told you, when I went to Athens Tech, I knew what I knew, but I didn't have certificates, diplomas to say I knew what I knew. But I did know what I knew because when I went to school, I had all black teachers. When I went to school, a person in the 4th or 5th grade knew probably as much as a person in the 11th or 12th grade now. So that's why, although I was in the 9th grade, I went to apply for a state job here, and the man told me, well, this job is a state job, and you have to have a high school diploma to have this job. And so I said, well, where do I get one? He said, go to the University of Georgia. So I went over to the University of Georgia. After being out of school 13 or 17 years, I went over there, passed the test, didn't have to study anything, because I knew what I knew. Because as I said, when I was going to school, the teachers were black. They cared about you, and they said, you got to know what I know. I got mine, and you're going to get yours, because their heart was for us coming up. Their hearts were for us to know things. Their heart was for us to be educated. I even had one teacher that would call us Mr. and Miss. And so that's why I call people Miss and Miss now. I say, yes, ma'am, to my children, to my grandchildren, to you, to Mr. Irmy, because honor, respect, dignity, that's what I grew up on in the school. My parents couldn't read and write. They said, the teacher has certificates. The teacher says he or she are qualified to teach you. I can't teach you. You go over there and listen to what they got to say. Whatever, if you don't understand what they're saying, you ask them, because they're the ones that said they are teachers. That means they train to teach you. I'm going to tell you what. So we were told to go to school, sit and listen and learn. The teacher was qualified to teach us. We all went and sat under the preacher because he was qualified to tell us how to live right. That's the way it was. But now, everything that happens get blamed on the parents. No one seeing a fault from the teachers. They don't see any fault from the preachers. All they see is the mother. All they see is the parents are wrong. But the parents are not wrong, because I'm a product. My sister is a product. My brothers who went to the service, one of my brothers' son came home with a C. He whooped him. He didn't bring any more C's home. Last Christmas, he has a master's degree in engineering, because all you have to do is tell them to do right, and the teachers have to care. But if a teacher doesn't care about you because you live on East Broad Street, and you're not going to make it anyway, and you're not going to be anything anyway, you don't know that. It's all with attitude. It's all with purpose. Do your job. You paid to teach me. I don't care if I'm living in a box behind a building. When I come to school, you are to do your job. You're not to come up short, and I won't come up short. It doesn't have anything to do with my mama. my parents, where I live, what I have on. You do your job. You said you qualified to teach me. Teach me. I'm supposed to come home and know that 2 plus 2 is 4. Only now they changed it and said 2 plus 2 is 5. I don't know how they're going to come up with that.
Break your heart. So Martin Luther King had a dream, but you had quite a different dream that involved your house, right? So tell me about your dream and tell me about your house.
My house and my dream.
Your house and your dream.
Okay. Someone gave me a vision about my house. Someone called me. 2 people called me 14 years ago on the same night from 2 different states. And they said that the government wanted my house. And told me I needed to get out of Athens. So I began to get people to call people to try to sell my house. And everybody lost my phone number. And I'm having trouble over there. I've had the city to come in. They've done something with the water. They rerouted the sewer. I've had to pay hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars to the water department. They're running a trail over there. And things are changing. And I asked the man council to allow me to add a room onto my house when I found out that they were changing the zoning laws to allow a big company to come in and build 256 units in a place where only supposed to be 40 units. And I just wanted to know if they could break that law, but I was told that I couldn't add a room onto the back of my house. And I don't understand that. So I think the law should be the law. I don't think you should hurt me because I don't have any way to fight you back and help this person that has millions, millions and millions. Just like if I walk out my front door and keep walking, the property behind the house across the street from me, I was told that some developers have purchased that for $1 million. I told that to Mayor Denson and company at the meeting about 2 or 3 months ago. And they still voted 7-3 to allow them to have that 256 units in a place where only 40 units supposed to be. And to just blatantly break laws and not even cover it up, just do it in front of the people. To do it, to say you don't matter. What you want doesn't matter. And as Mr. Erie was there, and he left out the room, and one of the commissioners made a statement, and he said, "Now where's the young man?" And so Mr. Erie had stepped out, I don't know, to use the bathroom or whatever, but he wasn't in there. And so this councilman said, "And see, that's the way these young boys are. See, they come up here fussing about what they want, changes they want made, but they don't stick around to the end of the meeting to see what's going on." And Mr. Erie walked back in, and everybody just started laughing because he was talking about Mr. Erie. And he went sat down, and I said, "Mr. Erie, he just got through tearing you up," but I don't know if he heard me. So now you're just not getting the story. But you had left the room. But you see what I'm saying? Just judging. And we had been there about 4 hours that night because they were doing a lot of voting. I mean, you have to go sometime after 4 or 5 hours. But I don't know what. But assumed that he came to spout off and then walked off. But he didn't. He was there for the whole time. But I don't want us to be prejudging us and saying ugly things about us because why don't you advertise that our people are not there? But I go because I want them to be quiet. I want them to stop saying, well, we don't show up at these meetings. But who did you tell? And then one radio station, they're not going to advertise because they're not getting paid. Where's the public service? Where's the public service? That's what I'm saying. Public service, like public service, like free. Where is the public service? Where is the service? Generosity. Where is the benevolent service for the public? So stop saying they welfare. Like one time, 3 policemen was on Pastor Killian's program, and they were talking about black women, and one of them said, yeah, they just welfare queens. They go get their hair done. They go get their nails done. So, of course, I had to call in. And I want to know, what does getting your hair and nails done have to do with the school? Because I went to visit the school. And the person I was with, I said, who is that? Is that a teacher? Is that a student? And I told them, it was a teacher. It was a teacher. She had breast, belly, and behind all hanging out at the same time. So when I was going to school, we knew who the teachers were. They had on their heels and they had skirts and stockings, and they was dressed neatly, and they walked neatly, and they talked neatly, and they didn't say, and it seems to me the more education people get, the more they say. Have they had any English classes, really? Have they had any speech classes, really? Education is going downhill, not up. But you want to get on and talk about black women getting their hair done. They get it done after work. They're getting it done after work. So I guess I would say that I'm for the little person, the person that didn't have time to speak, because in between getting to Brazelton, Georgia, at 5 o'clock in the morning to hit the clock, and then getting back home at 6 and got to get up again, they too sleepy and they don't have time, and the meeting is over when they get off from work. So I go to these meetings. So that's why I'm trying to get all I can and go share it with whoever I can.
So I'm going to tell you a stat, and you're just going to tell me what you think. So I heard a school board member say that 4% of children born in poverty in Athens, Clarke County make it solidly to the middle class. I'll say it again. 4% of the children born in poverty make it solidly to the middle class.
Make it
solidly. Stably to the middle class. What did we do wrong?
What are we doing?
Yeah, well, over the last 40 years, why is it the case that?
Because we allow people to do us wrong. Because we turn our head for the money. Just like the lady. I needed the job. If she was going to choose, not even that I was black, but I was qualified. These are her words. You are qualified for this job, but it will look better if I hired a white male student from UGA. And so that's the black on black crime. You up there, but see, you gotta make sure you stay up there. You gotta make sure people believe that you belong there, so you got to keep me down. That's wrong.
That's wrong. And once more, this is for the legacy. For the children. Think about the children now.
But this is the poorest city in the United States of America, with UGA over there getting $150 million in donations every year. Every year that donation is going up. Why can't they put some back in the community? I don't support UGA. I don't support them because if you work over there and you get a raise, they got to take it in your pocket and all this stuff. So,
Good, good. And like I said, it's a legacy piece. So what do you want to tell the next generation?
I want
Right
to,
into the camera.
okay, I will tell this generation now. Now is the time. Time is of the essence. Work out your salvation in fear and trembling of God, not man. Study. Do not be ashamed or embarrassed if someone calls you a nerd. If somebody say you're talking proper like white people, proper does not mean like white. Proper means correct. Don't be intimidated and look up the definitions of words. Stay off the internet playing games. Get on the internet for information, like the word primitive. People say, "Oh, that's so primitive," but they want you to feel it in a negative connotation. But primitive really means the first, prime, the best. That's what prime and primitive mean. Using words and using them in a negative tone to belittle people. Learn what things mean. Look words up. You're not destroyed for a lack of knowledge. You're destroyed because of a lack of knowledge, because the words, they always break that up. That aggravates me. When it says, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Why don't you finish the sentence? It says, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. For when you received the knowledge, you rejected it. So ignorance is not just because you don't have it. Sometimes ignorance is because when you get it, you reject it. And I would like people to accept the truth. That's what I would like. I'd like for our children to get out there and study, make people out of a lie. Say you can't do it, you can do it. You can do anything. You can accomplish anything. You can put your mind to it. They say you can't make them out of a lie. Be determined. Use what they say you can't do to show them that you can. That's what I would say to this generation.
Thank you very much.
Okay. You said it was going to be 15 minutes. I feel like I've been here an hour.
Well, you did it an hour. It was good. I just let it go.
Yeah, I really liked listening. I just kept wanting to ask questions. I think Irene could have shortened it, but I was like,